Good afternoon. I guess you guys are all wondering what next foreign exchange trader is doing here today to talk about sustainability or sustainable agriculture. Well, if you had told me that 5 years ago, I wouldn't believe. But wanting to make a career change, I was able to join an organization that focuses on exactly on those issues. The world growth, population growth, is creating such an issue that it's putting pressure on agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is one of the key things that are trying to make a difference. What I want to focus on today is mostly on two of my favorite commodities. It's behind me, coffee and cocoa. And the idea is to explain to you a bit more what the present situation is for these people, for the industry, and innovative solution that we can generally do to make a difference. First, the good news. Ethical sourcing issues have put sustainable agriculture practices in the forefront of many corporations. In fact, you'll have many corporations in the US and Europe have earmarked hundreds of millions of dollars each for specific issues. Issues that range from dealing with the small stakeholders, farmers, and getting them involved towards a sustainable agricultural practice, and all sorts of other traceability issues that are important to the big corporation. The bad news is there's still a lot of work to be done. Coffee is one of the largest or most popular beverages in the world today. I was reading statistics the other day that the average American coffee drinker drinks 3.5 cups of coffee every day. When you drink a cup of coffee, or you're having a chocolate bar, you never really spend the time to think as to how did it get here. What is the world? How is it transformed, and how did people move it from one place to the other? But when you're talking about sustainability, you have to look at all these issues. And so, for the sake of an example, I'll be using the coffee as a means to explain the sustainability. So before a cup of coffee gets to your plate, there's a lot to your cup. There's a lot of things that has to happen. First of all, when you go to the store, we'll be talking to the barista who will be making it. I mean, you have to see this. The love and passion that the barista has towards making a cup of coffee is unbelievable. One of the things that I was able to witness in a recent trip to Seattle is participate who view the World Barista Championship, and it was absolutely phenomenal. These people have a love of coffee that you cannot imagine, and I'm sure it's transcendent to a lot of different baristas. To the roaster who spends a lot of time finding the right coffee bean to roast and to turn that into what becomes our coffee. You have the green coffee purchaser who actually will taste thousands of coffees every year to find to source the right product and for the right quality for their own businesses. To the cooperative who actually works with the green buyer, coffee buyer, to bring the coffee from the farm all the way to the different businesses. And then at the bottom of the heap is the farmer, the grower. The grower who spends lots of time ensuring that the coffee bean is the best possible quality so that he can make as much money as he can possibly make off of that crop. But the issue, when we talk about sustainability, you're looking at the whole picture of sustainability. You have to look at the whole value chain. And each individual group have different vision of what sustainability means. But the one thing that gets them all together is the coffee bean. Because without a coffee bean, you have no barista, you have no roaster. So we have to go back, when we talk about sustainability, we have to go back all the way to the farmer. And what does sustainability means to him? Sustainability to a farmer, coffee farmer, is actually a question of survival. Will cocoa farming or coffee farming bring enough income for him to support his family? If the answer is yes, then most likely the next generation will take over the farm and continue farming. But if the answer is no, then you have to wonder, what are the options? If there's no other options, then you can rest assured that the next generation is going to pull away and not going to be farming. Whereas maybe there's other alternative, which would be maybe switching from, let's say, a cocoa crop to a rubber plantation, for example, which does not help in any way, shape, or form the supply chain. So we're losing one more supplier. So to better understand the role of the farmers, it's good to understand what these people are faced with. 80% of all coffee grown is going to the developing nation. The average age of a coffee farmer in Colombia is 55 years old. I don't know the statistics for the other countries, but I assume that they're very similar. Their average income is $2,000 a year. They can't access any funds from banks to help them improve their plantation, by buying fertilizer to increase crop yield, by maybe increasing their farm. There's nothing available to them. Which reminds me of a story when we were recently in the Ivory Coast. We were traveling in the countryside to visit farmers and cooperatives. And we were with a major European chocolate manufacturer. And the conversation we were talking about the plight of the cocoa farmer. And I was actually shocked to hear that the vast majority, if not all, cocoa farmers in the Ivory Coast had never tasted a chocolate bar. It was, to me, that was a revelation. And the reason why they hadn't tasted it is because they can't afford it. So, moving forward, how can they increase their income? Well, the only way to do so is by actually increasing the size of their farm. But given that they don't have the tools or the training, the method that they use to do this is deforestation and slash and burn techniques. Now, you may have heard about the slash and burn recently in the news. Indonesia uses slash and burn techniques to clear land for palm tree plantation for palm oil. Problem is that with the dry weather, these controlled slash and burn has turned into major forest fire. Singapore is under a haze right now. Last week, for the first time, they had to shut down schools because the air quality was so bad. And they expect this to continue until November. That's a full month of not being able to breathe any air. This is Singapore, under the haze. Deforestation accounts for 15% of all greenhouse gas emissions on a daily basis. The major cause of climate change. According to the World Wildlife Fund, of the 50 countries that has the highest deforestation rate, 37 of them are coffee producing. Now, what's shocking about that is that coffee actually used to be grown under shade, and now that seems to be changing a little bit. I think there's two reasons why this happened. The first one is that in order to get increased yield, a lot of farmers decades ago switched from shade-grown coffee to full sun-grown coffee. The second thing is that because of their income being so low, they have to use more of farming for their own needs. Sorry, I'm French, I can't get the English word. So farming for their own needs. So how they do that is the same thing as what I was talking about the Indonesia thing. Deforest the property, maybe use a little bit of slash and burn, and then put some kind of crop, livestock. And 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, the land loses its fertility. But they still need to feed their family. So what are you left with? You're left to move to the next 100 yards further and do the same thing all over again, while the land that you just left behind is going to be staying deforested all this time. So when we look at the effect of deforestation or climate change is a global issue. Everybody's feeling it. Whereas when you're looking at deforestation, the impact is local. Issues such as reduction in water quality and quantity, loss of biodiversity, soil erosion. These are all things that affects the population that is the deforestation. And the question is, why are they doing this? They know it's bad. Well, the answer is quite simple, unfortunately. Is that if you make $2,000 a year and you have a daily struggle to support your family, are you going to be worried about what's going to happen in 18 months or 24 months? You need to feed your family today. And so for this reason, the benefits of, or it's hard to sell the benefit of sustainable farming to farmers because of the lack of income. The one way to work around this is to create a program, a project, that encompasses all of the different partners in there. A project that will take into consideration the time frame of what a small grower would like to see, what the industry is looking for, and for the benefit of the environment, basically. So we've created this carbon finance project called the Shade Coffee and Cocoa Reforestation Project. And the idea behind that is to use the benefit of carbon finance to generate a whole new sustainable agricultural practice. For the small stakeholders, what that means is that we're going to be working with them to introduce a more rounded approach to farming, including providing money for them so that they can actually do the sustainable farming practices such as growing shade coffee or shade agroforestry system in order to alleviate the pressure of deforestation. With that, we'll be working with them to get certification as well. The certification being that once we start getting more certified coffee or cocoa, they'll receive a higher premium for their coffee and therefore getting a valuable product. The beauty about using carbon as a basis for this project is that there's a lot of monitoring that needs to be done. And the monitoring is exactly what the industry would like to see. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a lot more pressure on the corporation to look at where they're sourcing their particular raw material. Make sure that the sourcing is done in an ethical way, sustainable way. The whole process of the carbon market allows us to give the information for the industry to be able to say, yes, our sourcing is done properly. There's also a second benefit to the carbon process, the carbon project itself, is that the environmental assets that are generated from that, the carbon credit, can be sold to market for people who want to offset their greenhouse gas emission. And that revenue will actually become a long-term revenue for the cooperative, which will strengthen their financial standing and be able to provide services to their members as the crop cycle goes up and down. If you have a bad year, usually what ends up happening, the cooperative will have less income the following year and won't be able to retain their technical technician. Whereas the carbon offset will generate some income that will allow them to continue offering the service to their member in a bad year. For the environment, of course, using organic certification, organic farming, that will definitely be a benefit for the environment. The reforestation aspect of it is going to make a big difference. All of this is encompassing all three aspects of what makes it sustainable. The idea behind this is that we want to create a profession, or we want to make farming a profession that is viable and it will attract the new generation. Because at the present time, the new generation is not viewing farming as a mean of something to be done in the future. People view that as hard work and not worth things. If we continue that way, we're definitely going in the wrong direction and we'll have difficulty supplying coffee and cocoa in the future, which is going to be a big problem for us. Sustainability could, some people would think that if you buy certified types of coffee or chocolate, will actually alleviate the problem. And certification alone, I don't believe, will do so. And the reason I say this is that if we go back to the salaries or the income that the farmers were getting at $2,000 a year, it's very difficult for them to adapt their agricultural practices to fit under these particular certifications. Which means that as companies will say, well, I only will buy certain certification for my product, it means that some of the farmers will not be able to supply these. And if they can't supply it, then two things are going to happen. Either they're going to get a lesser amount for their crop, or they're not going to be selling it at all. Either way, it's not good. So we have to find a way, and that's why the Shade Coffee project itself is a project that encompasses everything. It covers certification as well as environmental benefit for the benefit of both the small stakeholders and also the industry. It encompasses all grouped together, and that's why we think it's the way to move forward as opposed to just a certification. One of the things I was told just before I got in today was interesting, is that when we, in our lifetime, we may need, maybe one lawyer during our lifetime, maybe two lawyers during our lifetime. We may need our doctor, we may need a doctor on a yearly basis if we're in good health. But the small farmers will need them 3 days a week. And for this reason, we need to come up with a program that allows them to strive, to grow, and to explore or expand the farming community to include the next generation. Because if we continue the pace we're going right now, the next generation is not going to be participating in farming, and then we'll all suffer. And I can't